Good evening and welcome to the proceedings of the Grand Rapids Public Schools Board of Education. Today is Monday, March 15. Ms. Lewis, will you please call the roll?
Yes. River Matias,
Present.
Mr. Ross. He's there.
Oh, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
here.
you are. Mrs. Williams,
Present.
Dr. Baker,
Here.
Ms. Davis,
Here.
Dr. Flores,
Present.
Ms. Grant,
Present.
Ms. Lewis is here, President Shutke.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. May I please have a motion for approval of this evening's agenda?
So moved. Support.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. First on our agenda this evening are our celebrations. Dr. Roby, I'll hand it over to you.
Good evening, everyone. We have actually two celebrations this evening. First, we'll begin with the Meyer Black History Month t-shirt designer and the Grand Rapids University Preparatory Academy with Executive Director Mr. Rodney Lewis and Principal Mrs. Kenyatta Hill. Craig, if you can bring both of them forward.
Good evening, Madam President Shaki, Dr. Roby, and distinguished board members. Thanks for having us here this evening. We are here to celebrate Elijah Brown, an 11th grade student at Grand Rapids University Preparatory Academy. He had some very notable accomplishments, and I've asked Mrs. Kenyatta Hill Hall to join us this evening as well to speak on the behalf of Elijah Brown. Mr. Brown also will be sharing his remarks about his performance. We also have some guests from Meyer and WMCAT that will speak on the behalf of Mr. Brown and the project that he was a part of. I would like to say that he got some pretty notable recognition from the Detroit Free Press in his design work in the t-shirt process. But I'm not going to steal the thunder of Miss Hill Hall. I'll let her share the notable accomplishments of her student, Mr. Elijah Brown. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam President Shaki, Superintendent Dr. Roby, and the distinguished board members. It is with great honor and excitement as principal at Grand Rapids University Preparatory Academy to be able to recognize Mr. Elijah Brown and his fabulous parents, Mr. and Mrs. Beasley. Mr. Elijah, I can go on about him, but I'm going to keep it brief. Mr. Elijah is a dynamic and motivated young man who has been using his gifts and passions as a leader and entrepreneur to impact our school body since the 6th grade. He's had a sister that has graduated from UPrep, and he has a younger brother that also attends UPrep. Mr. Brown has worked collaboratively with WMCAT, and he has done great internships and job shadows through music producing and arts as well. Plus, he is a scholarly student who is taking college classes at GRCC. So today, on behalf of his UPrep family, we celebrate Mr. Elijah Brown for continuing to use his gifts and powerful voice to impact the GR community. Mr. Elijah, would you like to share some words?
Hello, everyone. My name is Elijah Brown. Born and raised Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm in the 11th grade, and since I was young, I always had the passion of arts and entertainment, and I always wanted to do things to have an outlet to release things I think about, and just something that makes me happy, and that's what I did.
I'm gonna go ahead and jump in, Elijah. That's what's up. I definitely appreciate you challenging found a way to challenge your inner emotions to some sort of healthy outlet for sure. I've seen your stuff in Meyer. I was definitely proud to see that. Went ahead and had to get a purchase just off the strength of a GRPS and nothing else. So definitely just excited to see that, excited for you, and hope you continue down the path of self-expression in this regard. And who knows, maybe it might turn into a career, but if not, it's still a lifelong outlet to keep you balanced, keep you stable, peaceful. So for sure, just congratulations and appreciate your effort.
Yeah, and thanks to UPrep and WMCAT for working with you. So big fans.
I just want to say congratulations. I think that's amazing. We are a UPrep family in my household. So turn my screen off so the other UPrep member here could see Elijah. She said congratulations. But congratulations for all your hard work, and just kudos to everything that's happening over at UPrep. We appreciate it as a family, and I appreciate it as a board member.
Mrs. Hill, would you like to invite reps from Meyer and WMCAT? Do we know if they're here with us?
I do believe that Trudy is on as well. I'm not quite sure about if Mr. Williams from Myers was able to. Yep, there's Trudy.
Looks like we have Mrs. Brown with us.
Hi there.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
Hi, just on behalf of WMCAT, Elijah has heard me say so much already, but we are proud of the contribution he made with Jasmine Bruce, who was the artist on this as well. And the two of them together created just a really a nice shirt that we can be proud of, and not just a shirt, but just a message that we hope does fulfill Elijah and Jasmine's hope that it goes beyond just 1 month. And then also on behalf of WMCAT, thanks to Meyer for their partnership and their confidence in us and the youth in our community too.
So thanks, everyone. Thanks for having us. Mr. Brown, congratulations. Keep up the good work. And we'll see you graduating a year from now.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Is it possible to have him read what he designed?
That
Absolutely.
would be amazing. Mr. Brown, are you able to do that?
Yeah, so this isn't just a month. It's every day for us. Hashtag Black History.
Thanks.
And you can make a purchase in Meyer. How about that?
Oh, yeah.
Of the few that are left.
The few that are left.
It's a limited run. So if you can't find it at one Meyer, you might have to go to another.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Congratulations once again to Mr. Elijah Brown. This is a classic example of GRPS students using their minds well, using their talents well, and just the entrepreneurial spirit. So congratulations to that young man, and we are very excited and proud of him. Our next celebration is specifically to the Mrs. Ruth Jones Library dedication. As you know, we celebrated the legacy and memory of Mrs. Ruth Jones Hairston, and this included renaming the library at MLK Junior Academy. I'd like to invite Director Maggie Malone forward, as well as Principal Harvey Crawley.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for this opportunity. We're excited to have the opportunity to be here to recognize one of our amazing staff members. Dan Slachter is the art teacher at MLK Leadership Academy. Dan has been a dedicated employee who is always willing to jump in and excited to help out. So when the opportunity arises, he was more than willing to get some students together. He worked with some 5th through 8th graders at MLK to create watercolors. Ruth Jones, as everyone knows, is a beloved, cherished member of our community, and we wanted to honor her in her memory. And so Dan was more than willing to jump in, and I'm not sure if he's on, but I would love to have the opportunity to share my screen to show you the pieces that were created. And Mr. Crowley, do you want to talk through where these are in your school?
Actually, when we started the dedication, actually John Hemholt had me reach out to Dan, who was more than willing to do something. And what we wanted to do, actually, there's 3 pieces. There's one that stayed in the main office, but these were the 2 pieces that we wanted the family, particularly her 2 children, Nara and Scott, to take home with them. So these 2 pieces that you see in front of you, Nara got one and Scott got one. And there's a little larger piece that is going to remain in the main office at MLK, actually next to a portrait of Martin Luther King Jr. himself. So is Dan with us? Because I think he can speak more. Oh, there he goes.
Dan. Yeah.
Yay, Dan, did you want to share a few words with us?
Hi, everyone. I know a lot of you on this call right now, so this is awesome. It feels like the GRPS family. Just wanted to say how incredible it was to be able to work with my students at MLK on a project that really meant a lot to them, and as well as many of their parents had Mrs. Jones either as a teacher or their principal. So it really affected us more than what most people would think. And the kids really jumped right in and took ownership, right down to the fact that one of them was like, but Mr. Dan, Miss Jones's lipstick was the certain shade of red. We got to mix it up just right. I'm like, rock on with your bad self. Go find what you need, and we'll make it happen. And just empowering the kids through great, deep relationships with them is just, it was awesome. So I just want to say thank you to my students once again for being the best.
Thank you, Dan. We're proud of you. And thank you, Principal Crowley. This was a great opportunity. And thank you to all the students who did such an amazing job. I can't wait to see the final product in the office. Thank you for this opportunity, Dr. Roby, President Shockey, and all the members of the board.
I'd like to just interrupt real quick and just say, fan of Dan for years, and he's been one of the top advocates for teachers and students as long as I've been a part of GRPS, and so just appreciate his work.
And I will echo that, Dr. Baker, because Mr. Dan had my girls at Aberdeen, and Kayla was very sorry when Mr. Dan didn't come to Aberdeen anymore. So they're not there anymore, Mr. Dan. So you don't have to miss Aberdeen too much. But he was an excellent teacher. The girls loved him, and they had a lot of good experiences in that class. So thank you, Dan.
Yeah, if I may just chime in, I got to meet Mrs. Jones, and if ever a person personified a leader, a servant leader, as well as a children to our kids, it was her. She made that school a family, and as a result of that, a lot of our children got the kind of not only education, but real love that sustains you. And so boy, I got to meet her, spunky and just an activist, passionate, very God-fearing, and just to meet her and to see her style of leadership in that school that obviously transformed it and produced a lot of successful kids came out of that school.
I want to say one more thing. I got to be there, and it was really, I felt really wonderful sitting while our two board representatives, Ms. Williams and Ms. Grant, and just if you weren't there, I think if there's a chance to view it, it's just the insight into the community. It was phenomenal, and obviously listening to what Kim and Christian had to say, but the community itself is like, I just learned so much about the depth of that community by being there, and it's so appreciated being witness to it and support and being there while my colleagues spoke.
I will close out by saying that I agree with all of the feedback and comments. I know that people live their legacy, and I did not have the fortune of knowing Mrs. Jones-Hairston, but listening to the stories and just the impact that she made on the children of the community, her co-workers, board members, it just was really telling about who she was. And it was just a beautiful ceremony. And people are able to watch the ceremony. It is online on our GRPS website. And so please, if you did not have an opportunity to participate in the ceremony last week, take a look at it. It's a wonderful tribute to what was a wonderful leader and woman in the GRPS community and family. And that concludes our celebrations for this evening.
All right, thank you, Dr. Roby. Thank you to our guests. Thank you for connecting us to the work of our students and our teachers. It's so important to those of us that sit on this Board of Education, so very grateful. All right, let's move into this evening's secretary report. Ms. Lewis.
Yes, please check the district's website and go to the notice of regular and special board meetings to obtain Zoom virtual meeting access information, or if there will be any changes to doing in-person meetings. Meetings are also noticed and posted outside of the district office administration building following the open meetings requirement. The policy committee will be meeting this Wednesday, March 17th at 5 p.m. The ad hoc strategic plan RFP committee will be meeting on Thursday, March 18th at 5:30. And the Finance Committee will be meeting on Monday, March 22nd at 4:30. And please note that this is 1 hour earlier than you usually meet.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Next is our Academic Achievement Committee update. Ms. Davis.
Hello. We had a very full meeting, so I will try to be brief, but I take a ton of notes. So we did have Dr. Kalambula gave an instructional council report. They are not quite complete. They are going to address this again at the March meeting or at the April meeting, but they began vetting and finalizing a revised document for submitting course proposals. And they had Malika Brown attend because they are putting an emphasis on equity and asking questions like, do these ideas for courses serve all of our students? And how do students have access to these courses? Dr. Gunnell gave some information on moving forward after the results of the Center for Applied Linguistics Needs Assessment came back for the bilingual programs. This is for the schools Buchanan, Burton, Cesar Chavez, and Southwest Community Campus. The results, I did make some notes and I can answer any questions, but the Center for Applied Linguistics recommends 7 different things: effective integration of language, comprehension in both English and Spanish, higher order thinking, oral language in English and Spanish, avoiding concurrent translation, so just using one language at a time. Sheltered instruction observation protocol in both languages, and strategic planning with teachers and principals and other stakeholders moving forward. So what I gathered from that moving forward is that sometime in the remainder of this school year, there will be a 3-hour virtual PD for teachers in these programs. And next year, there will be 4 3-hour synchronous virtual trainings in regards to what the Center for Applied Linguistics is recommending. We did get a return to learn update, and 42% of students are virtual, 58 are hybrid. We do know that since January 19th, all students are above 90 percentile for participation. Jonathan Harper gave us an update on high school testing out, which took place March 1st through 12th. 170 students registered to test out of courses. They created a test out portal using a Google website, and these tests took place at individual buildings this year because of Corona. Usually students are bused to a centralized location for the tests. This is for students grade 8 through 11. Some of the tests do also have projects that need to be uploaded prior to taking the test, but students can test out of high school courses this way. Eric Harmston also gave an update on teacher feedback regarding the hybrid model. Some of that was things that they're struggling with, planning for different levels, cohorts in different places because of snow days and days off, monitoring hybrid and asynchronous learning at the same time, and just high anxiety and stress related to all of that. And some things that they are really appreciating, doing well, and excited about are having students in person, having afternoons for small groups to help students catch up, or students who might need a little extra help in certain areas. And having Wednesdays has been amazing for collaborating across the district. So people that are teaching certain subject areas can collaborate with teachers in other buildings. We also were given a wonderful fine arts update, and that was a video that we just saw Dan on here. He actually put that together, and it was beautiful. I had tears in my eyes because it just was a great showcase of our amazing teachers and how they're, an example would be a teacher teaching choir to live students, but also having those wonderful cameras that we purchased as a district and having those students virtually in on the warm-ups for choir. So it was just a wonderful highlight of what's actually going on in our classrooms, and it was great to see that. That's my brief update. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Davis. Any questions for Ms. Davis?
This isn't a question, this is a comment. I wonder if we could see the video that Dan made about how the teachers are dealing with the...
I hope you could. You would love it. It's wonderful.
Okay. Is there a way?
We'll make sure that, so we presented it to the academic committee first, and we talked about making sure it was available for the board for a full presentation. And so we'll make sure that we make it available in the coming weeks at our next official board meeting.
Thank you.
It is lovely. It shows the talent of our staff.
Ms. Davis, just a couple follow-ups with the I guess bilingual or the results. If I'm hearing you correctly, are they moving towards a bilingual approach in these schools like Burton and Buchanan and so forth? And that's why they're having the four.
Well, all four schools already have an option for Spanish families. Let me look at my notes, but Southwest is the only one that's the dual immersion. So Center for Applied Linguistics came in and did a thorough study on what is working and then gave recommendations. But as far as my understanding goes, moving forward, they're going to gather input from teachers, principals, and stakeholders as to what will work best for our kids and what our families want. If they want more of the approach that Southwest takes with the dual immersion. So nothing's finalized, but they are going to be working obviously with our staff for the next year. And it's a contract through Title III funding is how we're paying for that.
Yeah, because it sounds as though the recommendation is that rather than just kind of bilingual translation, you really ought to have one translation through, from start to finish a thought, and then you go English or Spanish or something like that, which would be an immersion style. So I'm just wondering.
Well, that's that recommendation for avoiding concurrent translation. So not to speak something in English and then immediately translate it to Spanish, but have a designated time for Spanish to be spoken and a designated time for English.
Yeah, it just sounds like it has a lot of potential for not only our bilingual kids already, but those kids that are already there that would naturally become bilingual as a result of the instruction. So, wow, cool.
Miss Davis, would you like me to call in Dr. Gunnell to give kind of an overview? Would that help support or?
I definitely don't want to speak fact because it is pretty intense. So that could be helpful if there's more questions.
Sure. If our moderators can call in Dr. Gunnell to kind of speak, to give a more detailed overview, I think that may be of support.
I was just commenting that if the recommendation is that, then is Dr. Gunnell recommending that some process be started in order to become immersion?
I'm here. I'm here. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Good evening.
So Southwest is a dual language immersion program. Southwest would remain the same. There has been conversation about the other three programs maybe going towards a maintenance pathway so that parents would be able to choose instead of ESL or transitional bilingual, having a maintenance program whereby it would be bilingual through 5th grade. Because remember that Buchanan, Burton Elementary, and Cesar E. Chavez are up to 5th grade. Does that answer your question, Reverend Matias?
Yeah, so it sounds as though the recommendation is that, or based on the findings, that some kind of dual immersion would be more effective. And I guess the question is whether those schools, rather than transitional and so forth, maintenance, would then perhaps head that since they're K-5th and then Southwest, or I don't know, however that would look like.
So right now, I just want to be clear, dual language immersion at Southwest is a two-way program. So that means that we have native English speakers and native Spanish speakers. While that is what we have, we were having the conversation about the other three schools. Currently, they have what we call an early exit program, meaning that native Spanish students get Spanish instruction and then they transition to English, and that in third grade. After third grade, they don't have any more Spanish. They don't have any home language. So the 3 elementary schools would not be dual language immersion because they wouldn't have a native English and a native Spanish. It would not be a two-way. The pathway would be that those students having transitional bilingual now, parents would choose the pathway. So they would start in pre-K and they would have what we call a late exit program or a maintenance program. And they would be bilingual from pre-K to 5, and they would have an opportunity to then go to Southwest Community Campus. Have I answered your question?
Yeah.
That sounds, that sounds, I think, clear to me, and that sounds like a positive path. I think that, so.
So more students would be would have the opportunity of being bilingual, biliterate, bicultural at those 3 schools versus right now, they transition only to English in third grade.
But Reverend Matias, those 3 schools wouldn't have native English speakers becoming bilingual. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just a little confused as to what the recommendation of the study was, and then what are we doing about it? What choices came out of that for us, and what choices are we choosing?
The recommendation was to look at both the dual language immersion program currently and look at the program model so that the transition at Southwest, so that they would have an equal amount of Spanish to English, so students would become totally bilingual, biliterate, and bicultural. And the recommendation was to look at what we have now, which is an early exit program at the 3 other schools, and look at having either a late exit or a maintenance program.
Dr. Gunnell, if I could ask a question. Do you believe it to be advantageous for our students to become fully bilingual and bicultural and biliterate?
I do.
And would you agree that an early exit program is a subtractive program in terms that it seeks to basically replace Spanish with English?
I don't call it subtractive. It's a transitional bilingual program. I'm not going to judge whether it's subtractive or not.
Okay, subtractive meaning that the language development of their native language ceases or is diminished as they complete their 3-year cycle of services using ESL, and
Yes,
that if the intent of that instructional program is in fact to transition them to English, therefore being subtractive in nature.
The intent is to transition into English. That is correct.
And so you agree that it is advantageous and more equitable for our children to develop both of their languages, right, to English and Spanish, to complete comparative fluency.
I agree that it's very advantageous to be bilingual, bicultural, and biliterate.
I would hope that we would move with God's speed, given the demographics of this district and the disadvantages that our children face in society, to ensure that our children are fully bilingual, by cognitive, developmental, very fluent in both languages. And that ought to be an equity piece that we look at seriously as we examine what we do for children instructionally in this district. The time has come. It is overdue.
Thank you, Dr. Gunnell.
Thank you.
I'm hearing a lot that is going to contribute significantly to the strategic planning work that we're doing. These conversations are vital and important and really will focus and direct us. So thank you for the discussion. Appreciate you coming into the meeting.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Davis. I will move us forward into the City Board Liaison Committee report. As a reminder, the City Board Liaison Committee is comprised of the mayor and the president of the Board of Education. Each then have 2 representatives from either the Board of Education or City Commissioners, and then Dr. Roby and the Manager Washington also attend those meetings. So at this last meeting, we both shared many updates on what's going on in our individual organizations, including fiscal updates. The City of Grand Rapids alerted us to some stimulus funding or COVID relief funding that's coming through at the county level in regards to rent support and eviction support. So they've asked the district to help communicate that out to our families. So if there are families who have been facing eviction or are having trouble making rent, there are some funds available. So stay tuned for that. I know that the city was working on those communications and is going to partner with our communications department to ensure our families are aware. The bulk of the meeting really was centered on our community's children. And as OCC is working to reimagine itself and look for its next leader, both the city and the district talked about the strengths of the program and also opportunities for growth. And so we were guided through a facilitated discussion around many of the assets of that organization. And also how do we, as partnering organizations, want to manage the organizational structure moving forward. So stay tuned for more. One thing I heard loud and clear was that we don't always know what our community's children is doing. And so as your board president, I'm committed to ensuring that that work is lifted up here at the board level so you can know what's happening in that really important and vital service in our community. That's my report. Any questions? Great. Dr. Baker, I see legislative committee on here, but I believe your meeting was canceled, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the reason why I'll just say real quickly is that there was no movement on the things that we discussed at the last meeting. So the 3 main issues are the transfer of funds from the federal government. The legislature is still discussing that. Also, we are still lobbying for a suspension of the teacher evaluation changes and the 3rd grade reading law changes, but there's been no movement on that. So we did not have a meeting because there was no changes, but those are still our 3 number 1 concerns.
Great, thank you, Dr. Baker. From here, we'll move into our superintendent's reports. Back to you, Dr. Roby.
All right. So we have 2 items, and I'll tee up the first one and then jump back in and tee up the second one. In March, the Grand Rapids Public Schools Foundation had the opportunity to share our continued work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. 2 of our staff members, directors Brown and Harper, provided an overview of kind of what that looks like as far as from a theory approach, and then also what it looked like in action. And one of the things that the Grand Rapids Foundation has asked us to do is to really dive into, similar to what we're doing at the board level here, is look at equitable practices and having conversations about what that looks like and kind of unpacking terminology and how to apply it. And specifically, as this is Women's History Month, we had a presentation around women in STEM and science and how it's manifested itself with our students, with different experiences that students experience within our district. And then also we were able to discuss the planning details around the masquerade gala that is scheduled to take place next month. And so I'd like to invite both John Helmholtz and Sally Andretta, the executive director of the Grand Rapids Public Schools Foundation, to come forward and talk a little bit about those programs.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent. President Schottky, members of the board, it's great to be here with you tonight and provide a little update on our GRPS Foundation. And yeah, we're still getting used to that. You might recall this used to be the Grand Rapids Student Advancement Foundation, who we affectionately call SAF. We still try to not call them SAF, but we're making that transition. But that is actually, I think, symbolic of the strength and growing relationship between the district and our foundation. GRPS Foundation, their board saw fit to further align the foundation with the district by specifically changing their name so that Grand Rapids Public Schools, GRPS, is listed right in the name. So there's no doubt, it's very clear, they are the exclusive fundraising partner for Grand Rapids Public Schools. It has been a pretty busy year. You all, in the middle of the pandemic, we pivoted and went to work with a Go Online campaign that was very successful. We could not have done that without the Grand Rapids Public School Foundation and Sally's leadership, her board's leadership. So they worked alongside us with that. We sought to do a feasibility assessment that was looking to possibly raise additional funds. That was before we knew that we would have the federal COVID funds that were being provided to us. So that has since been paused. I know that we also have the exciting Building Champions campaign for Union Athletics, and which we brought to the board already. And then you will be seeing something very soon about a very similar campaign for Ottawa Hills Athletics. And we'll bring those details to you. And then on top of all of that, Sally and her team have continued to raise funds for the more traditional programming we do in a normal year. Those are the field trips to Blandford and Lake Michigan, and art and music supplies, and all the great things that they do. And so that effort, their fundraising has continued in preparation for hopefully getting back to some normalcy next year. But then they've also challenged us to really think beyond what we've been traditionally doing to really look at what more can be done. And that includes everything from the use of the Teresa Weatherall Neal Principal Support Fund, and looking at what are other ways that the foundation can support us. And so I'm going to turn it over to Sally. She can give a few more details. I know she's got a pretty big fundraising event coming up, so hopefully everyone will buy their tickets and take part in this upcoming Mindshare event. So Sally, take it over.
Great. Thank you so much, John, President Schottky, Superintendent Roby, and members of the board. This has been an extraordinary year for all of us, and we're so grateful to our partners at GRPS, and especially to John and to Bridget. All the hard work this summer and the spring was crazy, but sometimes those difficult times allow us to quickly figure out how to do things. And it was an honor to work beside both of them this summer to be able to raise the funds for the Go campaign. And it was, though it was a big lift, it was successful, and we're really grateful that we have a good partnership with the district. We are really excited about Mindshare. The theme this year is Masquerade. Meaning mask, and it is April 22nd, and it is going to be from 6 to 7 p.m. Not long, but there are some really great speakers. There's some great programming. You can go to our website, which is very close to your website, grpsf.org, and get your tickets there. Please invite your friends. And sponsors, anybody that you might know that could help us with this. Again, all the funds go to support the district and some of the great programs that we help support with help give to our students. We're really excited about, and I hate to steal this thunder from John and Dr. Roby, but April 11th, GRPS celebrates 150 years. I mean, that is just, and I think many of you who know me and have sat down with me, I think the minute I came in, I said, by gosh, I'm going to have a celebration. It's going to be the biggest 150th class reunion I think that the United States has ever seen. So April 11th, we are going to send out something that is our date, but we plan to celebrate it the whole year starting April 11th. So we tentatively have an event planned for the week of August 23rd. We're going to start out with a golf tournament that the wonderful Sports Hall of Fame is going to be putting on, and all the proceeds go to support our students through the foundation. On the 27th is, you all know this Crosstown Throwdown is going to be our homecoming game. So we plan to have some events wrapped around that. And then I'm planning the next night to use Hausman Field and get a whole bunch of alumni there and celebrate this 150 years. So we're hoping that all works out, that we can all gather then. If not, we have some plans to bring in people on the big Jumbotron screens. So we'll figure it out, but we're really excited. And there'll be more announcements along the way about that celebration. So we're really excited about that. And congratulations to all of you. So for 150 years. And then with that, on April 11th, we'll also be announcing the alumni database that we've been working so diligently on for almost a year now. It is ready to go. We've had great feedback. I think my favorite thing about the summer, even though it was a little crazy, we sent out those cards asking for people's addresses, and some people were kind of, they're like, is this true? Is this right? There was all sorts of Facebook posts, and but people would call me. And I had such great conversations. Once we kind of got past what is this, I heard some amazing stories, and I can't wait for that to continue. My favorite one was a woman who told me how she met the love of her life on the dock of Reed's Lake, and how that they were high school sweethearts at GRPS. And I just got such wonderful stories. I cannot wait to hear the rest of them. And so we're looking forward to launching that. It'll be a great place for our alumni to come together. And we're really making it user-friendly and easy for them to get around. So look for that to come out on April 11th. So thank you so much for letting us tell you all a little bit more about what we're doing. Please contact me, with questions or ideas, anything. We're always here for you. So have a great rest of your week.
All right, thank you so much, Sally. I just appreciate all you're doing to celebrate and elevate GRPS alumni. And what an exceptional opportunity for our students to see what they're capable of with all of these individuals hopefully coming to town and sharing their stories. So we really appreciate the work of the foundation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love hearing people's stories. And so our high school experiences are always kind of like the beginning of before we launch. And so I'm excited just to see, learning those stories. And I know many of you as board members are alum of this district as well. So it's exciting. Thank you both, Sally and John. Moving on to the other part of my report is the enrollment equity project final report and recommendations. And one of the things I want to just kind of state is what I'm so appreciative of this work, that you all began this a while ago and have stuck with it through kind of different ups and downs, and including a global pandemic. And I think that it's a testimony to the commitment that this board and our community as a whole has to doing the work. The equity work has continued with teachers, support staff, building and district leadership. Many of our board members have participated and provided very open feedback around our enrollment processes and how they've engaged in that work. It's been a comprehensive deep dive around the processes. And so I'm going to invite both directors, Mel Atkins, as well as John Helmholtz and Brian Eschbacher, who have led this work over the last year and a half. I think the timing of this is very appropriate, as we are kind of at the beginning of our strategic planning process, and enrollment is a very important part of that as we look at how do we invite people to come into our district, what is their experiences, and how do we make sure that we continue to make that stronger. So with that, if Director Atkins, as well as Mr. Helmholtz and Mr. Eschbacher, Dr. Eschbacher will come forward to kind of give an overview to the board.
Thank you, Dr. Roby. Good evening, Board President Shockey, again, Dr. Roby, and fellow members of the board. We're excited to be back, and thank you for the introduction. On January 11th, Brian, our fabulous consultant, originally out of Denver, was able to give you an overview of kind of what we've been working on. And there was some feedback we received at that time. We were saying, can we get teacher input? Can we get some parent input? And so we took those into consideration, and that's exactly what we did. And so as a reminder, this work was temporarily delayed because of the pandemic, but we're excited that we were able to see this through. And we're excited to share today the kind of final report. And not the only report you're going to see over time, but the final report recommendations that Brian was able to compile. And so again, I'd like to introduce Brian Eschbacher, and he was the former, he led the planning and enrollment services team in Denver Public Schools for 7 years and did this work really hands-on. And so Brian, take it over.
Great. Thank you, Mel. And thank you all for your time this evening. It's great to see you again. I'm going to share my screen. And please let me know, is it showing up okay? Okay, great. Well, great to be with you all again. Over the past 2 months, as Mel had mentioned, we've been continuing to engage stakeholders and get more and more feedback on this process. And so I'm excited tonight to run through some of the highlights, what we heard from our stakeholders, what we saw in the data, and some of the recommendations that we see as opportunities for increasing equity of access as we think about the future. So quick rundown of the goals for tonight. We'll talk about that engagement since January. We'll go through the stakeholder feedback, and we're going to put it into the parent journey that we discussed last time. We'll talk about the data highlights and the recommendations. And all of this draws from materials that were shared last Monday night with you. I know they were lengthy materials, and so I'm going to go through the highlights tonight. Happy to take questions from you. But I also recognize that there may be further conversations about this in the future as you continue to discuss these specific topics. Okay, so last time we talked about what was part of this equity diagnostic. How do we go about this whole process? So the top of it, it starts with the stakeholder feedback. So wave 1 was done last summer and fall. That was with principals, that was with central office leaders, the equity leadership team, and district leaders. Wave 2 came out of our conversation in January. So since then, we've met with teachers, we've met with secretaries, we met with the student equity leadership group, we met with parent action leaders to continue to build out some of the perspectives and the experience that families are going through today. In total, we spoke with 111 different stakeholders from each of those different groups. And so I'm really appreciative of everybody's time. We were constantly talking to people when they were running from something to another thing. And so really appreciate their time on this. As we think about the policy and process review, this went through the communication materials, the applications themselves, the process flows, board policies, and the matching systems. And then the data analysis we'll look at tonight in terms of themed school applications, assignment, and synergy data. And then we're connecting these in with best practices. And I think this is something where this kind of movement is now about 18 years in. It started in New York City 18 years ago of the term unified enrollment and trying to bring together different enrollment strategies to help families, to help schools, and help the system overall. And so the good thing is we have a lot of different exemplars to work from. Some are the same size as Grand Rapids, some might be bigger, some might be in smaller cities or bigger cities, but it's a good thing that we have these examples to draw upon as proof points to see, lessons learned in places that have worked well in that. And so won't go into those tonight, but a lot of those are alluded to in the final report. So we're going to look at this experience in 2 different ways. We talked about this last time. Tonight, we'll look at it quickly from the parent experience or the family experience, and then we'll look at it from the district experience. But this really helped through all the conversations articulate the different pain points and successful points in the process. And so it starts with there is a strong culture of school choice in Grand Rapids. We know that's within Grand Rapids Public Schools. We know there's also choices related to private schools, charter schools, other districts. And so throughout the conversations with parents and with students and with school-based staff, we heard that people really understood school choice. And so that was a strong part of the process. But we did hear that there was low awareness of neighborhood schools. Even the students we heard from, I know my neighborhood school, I know what a theme school is, but I don't know what other neighborhood schools are. And so there's an opportunity there that we'll talk about. We saw in the data there was higher engagement among affluent and white families compared to other student groups that we looked at in the data. And we heard from students especially that it was difficult to determine the best fit for my school. And the word fit came up over and over again with students about how do you understand if you're an 8th grader, school A versus school B, what might be right for you, and the challenge of working through that problem. We heard about different applications for theme schools from neighborhood schools, not to mention different applications for charter schools, private schools, and other districts, and how overwhelming that can be for a family. We heard from students that I did not qualify for my top choice. I really wanted to go to a certain school, but I did not qualify to get in there. We've seen in the data that schools do not reflect the diversity of GRPS, and we're going to see that in a second with the data. We heard about offers being revoked. So I attended a school, but then my grades weren't at a certain place or my attendance wasn't at a certain place, and now I can't go to that school anymore. And we heard about limited visibility to data and the term unexplained assignments, which is the technical term for saying, how did that person get into that school? I don't know, did they have the grades or not? And this level of mistrust that came in. So this was some of the themes we heard through the family conversations. Then when we think about it from the district perspective, we know that the district's competing against these other school options. And in the Plant Moran work that was shared out in December, about 60% of students that live in Grand Rapids don't go to GRPS. And so that is, part of the challenging starting point for enrollment work in Grand Rapids. And we've heard from the district side, from the neighborhood principals, that it's really challenging for them to promote themselves. I think we're taking good steps in the right direction with the virtual expos this year, but some of those conversations happened prior to the virtual expos. We heard about uncoordinated family engagement between departments and partners. So we're not most effectively reaching all of the families in Grand Rapids to make sure that they're able to engage in this process. There were a lot of manual operations. It's very time intensive to complete the process. It doesn't integrate with a lot of other systems from the technology perspective, so we're missing some opportunities there. We've seen a high percentage of proficient middle school students tend to attend few middle schools, which one of the impacts of that is limiting diversity. I mentioned the mixed trust. We heard it on the family side. We heard it on the district side. Lack of data tracking and reporting. Heard it on the family side. Heard it on the district side. And we heard about some schools serving high mobility and having high class sizes, and other schools having lower mobility and lower class sizes. So a lot of stakeholder input went into this from a lot of different groups. And now let's talk about some
question. Can you explain what that comment about high percentage of proficient middle school students attend few middle schools?
Yeah, so if we zoom in on 6th and 7th graders and we zoom in on the students that qualified in the MAP testing, on testing in the 50th percentile of both math and reading, those students are tending to cluster together into fewer schools. And so what we're seeing is like these, cluster mentalities play out in a few different ways. Sometimes it might be by race or ethnicity, and sometimes it might come out that the students that are testing proficient tend to then stick together into one of few schools.
Thank you.
So let's move into some of the data views here for a second. So we're going to look at this in a few different ways. And I think one of the things I'll come back to is there's 3 lenses that I recommend looking at enrollment equity through. The first one, the easiest one to get your head around, is participation. Did they participate or did they not, right? It's very binary. The second one that we'll look at is preferences. For those students that did participate, what schools were they looking to go to? And then the third phase of that is qualification. For those schools that did have a qualification criteria, did they get in or did they not? Right. So you could think of this like a funnel. I've used things like Journey before where it looks like a roadmap, but those are the 3 questions that we typically like to look at. And so we'll start with applications, right? So this first view takes us back to 2018-19. We've changed application systems over time, which sometimes makes it trickier to compare apples to apples. This was a very clean data set for us that we got last year. And so we can look at the gaps between the students enrolled in 2018-19 and the applicants for theme schools in those years. And in an ideal, equitable world, the participants and the enrollees would look the same, right? The left chart and the right chart would look the same. But what we're seeing here is gaps in terms of race and ethnicity, in terms of participation, right? So white students are more likely to participate. So the green bar, while white students make up 19% of the district in the 2018-19 school year, they made up 33% of applicants. So they over participated on this metric. And then Black and African-American students under participated by 9 percentage points on this metric, while Hispanic or Latino students participated at 4 percentage points lower rates. So we're starting to see a gap right at the top of this. So imagine the top of that funnel, we're starting to see a gap in terms of the participation by races and ethnicities. What we can then start to look at is preferences.
I have a question. So you say participation, what do you under participate, over participate? Define that. What does that mean?
Sure. So if we had 100 students who could have submitted a theme school application, we would want those 100 students that submitted the theme school application to look like the student body of the overall district. And so what we're measuring here in terms of the word participation is, did they submit a theme school application for the 2018-19 school year?
So in that example, for example, so if you sent out 100 applications to people of color and white, do you know why either or both, and for this purpose, 19% participated? Do we know why? Why didn't they submit those applications if they had an opportunity to?
Yeah, it's a great question. And this is really where we did the data analysis first, and then we did a lot of community engagement wrapped around that. And so that was helpful for us to have some of these things in the back of our minds. I think a lot of it goes back to engagement with families and making sure that families of different backgrounds, different native languages have the same level of resources in terms of outreach on what is the process, when do I fill it out, how do I fill it out, how do I determine what school is right for my child, what are the options for my child. A lot of it goes back to that journey and seeing drop off on that journey, that some families are making it through that process at higher rates than others. And so from the community feedback we heard, a lot of it came back to just confusion with the process, not knowing what my options are, not knowing the timing. That was a common set of feedback. And when we've looked at other cities that have closed participation gaps, it is most effectively done through that community engagement. And that's what we're going to talk about as one of the major recommendations, is how do we improve engagement to families of different backgrounds in the city.
Got another question, sir. This data here, we have obviously some of the students on the right who submitted applications are coming from out of district. I don't necessarily think it's a significant amount that would greatly skew the data, but I'm just curious if that number on the right is simply students who are in the district, or does that include all applicants, including out of district?
Yep, it includes all applicants. That's a great question. Yep, so you're right that it could skew it a little bit. So
that's an important question because, yeah, it would be nice to know if that extra percentage of white students are people who are not generally a part of the district. But so anyway, that's an important question that Maynard raised.
Mm-hmm. So once we make it, yeah.
No, I was going to say, so I guess to that, and I guess obviously we don't need it tonight, but could we sort of refigure those numbers and just present that same data just based on applicants who are GRPS students? And again, I know we don't need it tonight, but it would be good to know.
Yeah, and what I think we might be able to do is use the most recent application period, because I know that data is 2 years old now. So what we could, since we just wrapped up round 1 of the application period, we could refresh it with current data so that it's most up to date for you. And then pull it by in district, out of district.
Thank you.
Great. You got this is good preview of future recommendation 10, which is establishing metrics for transparency with key stakeholder groups like board members. So this is perfect. So once we make it through participation, then we look at where students are preferencing. And this is where, when we zoom in on 6th and 7th grade, we have the 6th grade academies, we have city. This is where we start to see gaps in which schools different student groups are preferencing. So where those students are seeking to apply to. And so the way to read this chart is we're looking at it based on income levels. And I know sometimes we bounce back and forth between socioeconomics and race and ethnicity. One of the reasons we look at socioeconomics is it's the only way the Supreme Court allows schools to prioritize students, right? It's illegal to do it through race and ethnicity. So sometimes we'll show things through socioeconomics because it's actually actionable. You can actually start to do priorities for socioeconomics if you want. So that's one of the reasons that sometimes we'll use it. But what we see here is for 6th and 7th grade applicants, this is for last year's data, 75% of students who didn't qualify for free or reduced price lunch, right? So middle class or upper middle income class students, 75% of them listed one of the test-in schools, right? So there's a high concentration of students that are trying to go to one of Blandford, Economicology, Zoo, City. We lumped Ford and Museum in there as well because of the compacts and the parent interviews. So one of those 6 schools, they're trying to go 75% of non-free and reduced price lunch students are attempting to go there. And how does that compare? Well, only 45% of students who do qualify for free or reduced price lunch are attempting to go to the 7 schools. So we're starting to see this concentration of those more affluent students attempting to go to one or fewer schools versus students with a lower income background are seeking to go to a broader set of schools as well. So here's another place, right? We're constantly looking for gaps between student groups to determine the potential inequities. Okay, slide 8. This is something we showed in the January board update, which was part of the rationale for changing the entrance criteria for test-in schools for the upcoming fall, which is to have 2 screens for those tests in schools. The first one is for students who test in the 50th percentile in both math and reading. And then the second one, the second screen is math or reading. And so this shows the potential impact of that. And this was some of the rationale that we did from the data case to show that by moving to an or qualification, we can create more diversity in schools because of the test results of students. This is from winter 2020. And so I know there was a question before about dual immersion programs. This type of data view is the type of question that you could ask yourself as you're talking about school-specific entrance criteria in the future. So whether it's a year from now or a few years from now, if a question were to pop up, well, what does this do to potential student bodies at the school? This is the type of view that could be really helpful. And so, here was how we were trying to put it into action from this report into the 2021 application processes by being able to look at actual student data and see the impact of an entrance criteria on it. We looked at students with disabilities and we did see disproportionality here as well. So when we look at percentage of students with an IEP, this is for the current school year, 18% of students at a neighborhood school have an IEP, 11% of students at a non-test and theme school have an IEP, but only 1% of students at a test and theme school have an IEP. So large gaps between the different student groups that are in there. One of the rationales for this when we were talking with the special education team is that only 2 of the 24 self-contained programs are located in theme schools, while the vast majority are located in neighborhood schools. And then another view that we have for middle schools, again, we're starting to look at neighborhood versus all theme versus test-in. When we look at the percentage of economically disadvantaged students at the middle school level in particular, we're looking, this chart looks at 6th and 7th grade. We see that 96% of students that attend a neighborhood middle school in those grades, 96% of the students qualify for free or reduced price lunch. And then you see a large drop from there to all theme schools at 70%, and then another drop from there to only 45% of students at the test and theme schools. So a large gap at the middle school level socioeconomically between the students that are attending a neighborhood school and the students that are attending a test and theme school.
So is that, because of the economic differences, are we assuming that these kids are not being read to or things like that? What are you saying with that data? Because in our neighborhood schools, the economic gap difference is that much larger. So what are you concluding out of that?
And I think the conclusion here is when we look at this from a data perspective, we want to start to see the level of gaps between different student populations. And so we're zooming in on these grades in this slide, right? The full report has more data views. I pulled a few out for our discussion tonight. What we want to look at is gaps between different student groups in terms of access to schools. And so what this chart is looking at, it's not making any other statements about home life or anything. It's just viewing socioeconomically. If the district is roughly 80%, at the middle school level, if we had perfect balance, every middle school would have 80% of students who are economically disadvantaged. But what we're seeing is that there are large gaps. Neighborhood schools are at 96%, test and theme schools are at 45%. So that's what we're showing here.
And can we also assume that that there are certain characteristics related to race and ethnicity, paired with socioeconomic status. So when you look at a higher level of socioeconomic, we'll call it deficiency at this point, or status of lower income, that there is a greater number of racial minorities in those, or if I can use that, diversity in that population, correct?
Yeah, so we can pull the charts, and I think in the full report, there are similar charts pulled by race, ethnicity, as opposed to socioeconomics.
Right, so that would show somewhat of a pattern.
Yeah, we can show both ways.
Thank you.
So there's a lot of different data views we could do on this. The full report's about 60 pages. It also has a lot of stakeholder quotes in it, as does the presentation. I know those are long documents. I know there's a lot of literature going on right now related to education. And so what I was trying to do is make these reports digestible, given everything that's going on. But there were some very compelling quotes that happened from those 111 stakeholders, and many of those are listed in the detailed report, as is more data analysis, as is best practices to other districts, as is detailed implementation plans. So a lot in the final report. For the sake of time tonight, I'd like to transition to the 10 recommendations. So we did all of this work. We did this data analysis, had all these conversations. We looked at the processes and the communication materials. What do we see as opportunities to increase enrollment equity in Grand Rapids as a result of that? So we have 4 overarching strategies shown here, with 10 recommendations underneath it. And in the detailed report, many of these recommendations have sub-recommendations under them as well. So there's a lot of detail underneath it. But to go through it tonight, starting on the left side, the most important thing that I urge any school system that I work with is to get the team right, to then go work on this. This can be very complicated stuff. It's the interconnections between enrollment and so many other things that make this very complicated. And so I think at the start of this, it's determining the roles and responsibilities for launching this work and for operating enrollment in the future. And so that's the first place to start. And that's why we put that number 1, and that's why it's on the left. Then what we move to is making enrollment accessible and easy. At its core, if you can remember nothing else about enrollment equity, make it fair and easy. And I think there's an analogy that we're all experiencing right now in the community, which is trying to get people signed up for vaccines, right? We want to make sure that vaccines are accessible to everybody, especially those high priority groups first. And if we have systems for signing up for it that are really complicated, well, then it's no surprise that some people are engaging in vaccines at a higher rate than others. And so if we can make enrollment fair and easy, that's a really good start towards equity. And so we do that by increasing participation, by coordinating parent engagement resources. So that's not just district staff. This recommendation is not go hire a whole bunch of people to create a phone bank. This is working with community partners that are trusted by our families so that they are getting engaged from people who they know and trust. We also want to increase the promotion of neighborhood schools as choices. This started this year with the virtual expo in February, another virtual expo in April, trying to make it easier for families to learn about and then apply to attend other neighborhood schools if their own neighborhood school is not the best fit for them. And then the fourth is to unify the application and assignment process for all schools. And so when you hear the term unified enrollment, this is really where this is headed. And I think this could be the hub of the project going forward, which is next winter, we could have all neighborhood and theme schools on a single application and a single timeline for the 21-22 school year. And so that could really serve as the hub of this project. And then the promotion comes off of it, the family engagement comes off of it, but that could be the hub of it. Once you do that, then you can open up more schools to all students. You can clarify eligibility and options for students with disabilities. You can continue to evaluate entrance criteria at theme schools. Again, I gave some metric considerations for how to keep looking at that. We've already taken steps in the right direction this year by changing some of the testing qualifications. And then you can eliminate revocations at theme schools, something that we heard clearly from multiple conversations that will be happening this year. And then you can start to look at this and how this work connects to other key strategies long-term. So the strategic plan is starting. This could be a nice connection into that work as we think about evaluating theme school locations in different parts of the cities to make sure that they're balanced throughout the city, and looking at transportation options, knowing that transportation is expensive, but it can be key for connecting students with schools. You can conduct additional equity diagnostics. This was a deep dive focused on enrollment, but with the equity policy that the board passed a few weeks ago, There's no reason that one couldn't also be done on HR or funding or facilities or something like that. And so we can conduct additional ones and then keep connecting the work together. And then the last one that I really appreciated the comments earlier is to establish, monitor, and publish enrollment equity metrics. I don't know if everyone will always trust an algorithm in the background to say that this algorithm was correct in assigning this student to this school. A lot of parents come to it from a place of, did I get my first choice? If I did, I'm happy. If I didn't, I'm suspicious or unhappy at worst. And establishing, monitoring, and then publishing those metrics and being transparent with the community can be a real step forward to building trust in this process and building a data-driven perspective on continuing to look at these in the future. I think this diagnostic could be redone in 5 years and it would have a different set of findings on it. Maybe 5 years ago, it would have looked a little bit different as well. And so by having those metrics, it can put that continuous improvement mindset in place for continuing to increase equity as we go forward. So I'd like to pause there and see what questions you all have.
I just this is fantastic data and analysis. That's very useful. You know, just these are big questions, but I think that we need to consider. One is that the inequity of application and assignment to theme school is a real issue, and I think that you made this apparent. I don't think that most of us were surprised by that data. Even if we reached complete equity in terms of socioeconomic base ethnicity of application accessibility to the theme schools, we wouldn't be creating equity in the district if inequities existed with neighborhood schools. And one thing that you said early was that parents didn't know how to choose the school that was the best fit for their child. And I think that the issue of choice always then puts the pressure for the parent to determine the best fit. And whereas most of us grew up where the neighborhood down the school was the fit we got. and so I think that's a problem with choice, and we have to compete because people have other choices. 60% of our kids in the city don't go to our school. So we have to compete at choice. But one thing from that I think that is clear is that the parents are pretty much under the idea that the neighborhood school is not the best fit for their child. And I think that even though I'm a big advocate for the theme schools, I think that the theme schools do what they ought to do, which is to provide specialty kinds of experiences for students that want and thrive in different circumstances. But we need to make our neighborhood schools to be as equitable as possible, and then we might get rid of some of these other inequities.
I kind of struggled, and I'll put it this way. You know, we talk about inequities, and so I guess challenges and questions that I have are our neighborhood schools getting the support that they need to provide the best education? And so, you know, I think of parents that are choosing, let's say, in choice, to have their kid consider a theme school versus their neighborhood school. Why are they making that choice? What does this theme school have that this one doesn't? Or what is the expectation that the theme school is promoting that the neighborhood school isn't? And so the person then is saying, I want my kid in this theme school because, you know, it's college bound, it's whatever. And supposedly we have equity in education, in what we are providing, the education we're providing our kids. And so, you know, what's the expectation that the neighborhood school has versus the theme school has, or the perception that the theme school has, that they say, wow, this school is, for lack of a better word, crappy. I want my kid to go to this school because they do homework, because they have basketball teams, because, you know, they have more opportunities. And so why aren't we providing that at the neighborhood level, and then the supports to do that in terms of events or other kinds of things there. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but so I struggle with that in terms of understanding what are the choices, the perceived choices that our families are saying, I want my kid in this STEAM school versus the neighborhood school because it's two-tiered, because what is it? And what did you guys find in regards to that?
It's a great point. We heard a variety of reasons, even starting with last June, one of the neighborhood school leaders at the secondary level commenting that their lawn hadn't been mowed in a few weeks and it didn't look as nice on the outside of the building as a theme school nearby. And so I think that starts with some of the curb appeal and perceptions of it. But I think the word reputation came up frequently and pervasively in conversations with school leaders in particular about the reputation of our school versus a theme school. And it's sometimes difficult to put your finger on the specifics because it's just, pervasive. I think one of the things we do encourage in the report is to look at some of these other areas for an equity diagnostic. It's become, more popular for school systems to conduct a funding diagnostic to make sure the per pupil funding reflects student need. And that could be an opportunity. I think the strategic plan will be a really good opportunity to look at how do we think about the size of our theme school portfolio versus the size of our neighborhood school portfolio, and getting into some of the questions as the district's enrollment has been changing, how those come together. But I think probably the word we heard most of all, if I were to have made a word cloud, if I had recorded all the calls, would have been reputation. The reputation of that theme school is better, and therefore I think it could be a good fit for my child.
I'm not hearing things like safety. Is it safe for my child to go there? In the presentation, I didn't see some of the perhaps perceptions that are there. The testing or the resources for testing. And so what are you hearing? Let's talk. What are you hearing about the reputation? Yeah, that school is better than this school, or less better because there's more fights, or because there's less parent involvement. What is it that you're hearing?
So we did hear some things. First off, I don't want to over index what I heard to the whole district. I think broader engagement on this would be helpful. So I want to name that. And I think it was challenging during COVID for us to do broader scale engagement because of just how much families were dealing with. I didn't hear safety at all. That was something, talking with students, parent action leaders, teachers, I didn't hear anything about safety. So that's good. I heard things about, you could lump in like the physical elements, right? So some teachers commented on the feel on the inside of their building. We heard about the outside feel of the building. We heard about culture. We heard about the unique program models. That was one that came up a lot from teachers, that they have a unique program model and I don't, right? If it was a neighborhood principal. So I think understanding how we could, figure out what are the different, gaps between theme schools and neighborhood schools related to, the physical asset, class sizes came up, student mobility came up. My classroom is a rotating door during the year. Kids are coming in and kids are coming out. That's not happening in theme schools. Like understanding all those different potential gaps and then determining what are potential strategies to close those gaps so that there's less variation between the two. I think that could be a good opportunity. And we get into some of that in the report, but I think this will just continue to evolve as well.
On that note, Dr. Roby, can I ask you to send the full report to the board again? So just to lift that up to the top of our inboxes. Sounds like a lot of this is in there. Yeah, perfect.
I will make sure that this evening I send it to everyone so that you have it at the top of your inbox so that you're able to see it.
Thank you, Dr. Roby. Sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Flores.
Oh, I'm sorry. I would like to back up to a statement that you made, Brian, and that was about perhaps it would be good to examine with an equity lens our funding, for programs? And are there other things that you would recommend that we do in terms of assessments of equity, and what areas that we ought to do since we have this upcoming strategic plan processing that we'll be going through?
Yeah, I think it's good that we did a deep dive on this, and I recognize it was one functional area, but there's a lot to unpack in it. And I think as we shared in January, enrollment is a real connective tissue between different areas of the student experience and the school. And so it quickly, you can kind of click on a connection and see a whole nother area to explore more fully. I mean, some of the ones that I've seen from other places are funding, which is, what does the per pupil funding look like at a school level lens? And how does that link to student need versus other variables like school size or is it, if it's theme versus neighborhood, something like that. I think that's one. I think talent came up from school leaders. How come that school gets the best teachers, right? That was I'm paraphrasing, but that was like a type of quote. So having a talent diagnostic to determine the diversity of teachers, the quality of teachers, the experience of teachers, the pay of teachers between different school models. I think we didn't get into class size on this, but that came up. So understanding class size and that impact on funding. I think that's another potential area. And then one with facilities. It came up in a few different conversations that how come theme schools have the nicer facilities? And so, I know Plant Moran had done some work on that, but if there's a facility condition index or facility condition assessment, like that type of work, and just understanding, are there potential gaps where, certain schools have better quality facilities than another? Those were a few that had come up through our conversations. I'm sure I'm missing other, there's a lot related to the core classroom, of course, in terms of, DEI and the curricular materials, but these were some that came up through our conversations throughout.
Thank you. Certainly an opportunity for assessment prior to developing a complete plan for the district would be advantageous. Okay.
And go ahead, Ms. Lewis.
Sorry. I just wondered, I think John or Mel might be able to ask this question. Have we ever considered not having these kids tested at all? And just like, when I was teaching my AP classes, we never told kids, no, you can't go to AP. And they'd come into AP and, maybe they'd be there for a week and decide, this might not be for me, and let the kids, self-segregate in terms of their abilities? Or is it that we only want the best students there?
No, very good question. And so, in all honesty, we talked about everything, and we decided the best metric right now is, because we did make a change, to and or in the 50th percentile in reading or math. Let's look at that data. And this is not a one-year project. It's not a two-year project. We know this is going to take many, many, many years to get to where we want to go. And so we didn't feel comfortable committing that big right out the gate. We want to make sure we have the right data, look at trends over time, and we can do a lot of the other items first before we really decide kind of collectively what's the best decision on that, really on number 6, evaluate the entrance criteria. We want to continue to evaluate.
Okay, thank you.
Brian, thank you. This work is truly helping to inform this massive lift we're undertaking of strategic planning. And so, we've mentioned this report among some of the others, specifically for the firms to reference in the development of this long-term plan. So really grateful for your deep dive and for helping just really unpack where the work in our district really lies, because strategic planning can go in so many directions. And it's really creating a light on the path forward. So grateful for your work. Dr. Roby, I guess next steps is my question. Where do we go from here?
So in your inbox, you should be able to see the full diagnostic report that I'm just sending, as well as the PowerPoint. I apologize for sending them separately, but I think, again, this is part of a continual conversation. And again, with my opening comments with respect to this is not a short-term project. We have dug deep to kind of peel back all the layers of the onion to see where we're at. And I think it is really important as we move into strategic planning to look at where does enrollment, equity, and access fit into that, and being serious about that, where that, where do we land, and make sure that we are looking at how we're funding schools, and then kind of those more surface kind of low-hanging fruit items with how schools look from the inside and the outside, but then also the deeper issues around, do we have a balance of teachers as far as experience, and then how are we recruiting teachers to our other schools? Because I agree with the comments around making sure that all schools are strong, rigorous, relevant programming. That's really important. But we want to make sure that we're aware of the perceptions of our schools, and making sure that we equip our administrators to market their schools, because each of the schools that we have within our district have very viable and strong programs. It's just making sure that we put an emphasis on all school programs, and making sure that we equip and support building leaders around what their schools offer, so that people don't think that a theme school has a better programming choice, and making sure that we're marketing all of our schools. So more to come, and we'll make sure that, again, as we dive into the strategic planning process, that we're really clear in having a structure of how parents select schools, and make sure that it is well matched with what people are wanting. And that concludes my reports for this evening.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Roby. Thank you again, Brian. It's great to see you. Thank you, Mr. Atkins and Mr. Helmholtz. Okay. Our next item this evening is just one action item, and it is the approval of our consent agenda grouping. May I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
Support.
Great. Any questions or discussion? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Lewis, please call the roll. Ms. Lewis, you're on mute. Still on mute. Oh, there we go.
I was mumbling to myself. Reverend Matias?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Dr. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Flores?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis, yes. President Shockey?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. We do not have any discussion items this evening. We also do not have any public comment this evening, so we will move into superintendent comments. Dr. Roby.
All right, I'm going to be really brief, but I want to again lift up that this work is really important, and I'm really grateful as a newcomer to this community that all of you are really trying to engage in it in very meaningful, relevant ways. The work of our students and our teachers and our staff and our leadership that we're doing daily, it's hard, and I think it's the right work. I just also want to acknowledge and lift up our team members who are, and I'm not always able to call out who's doing what, but you heard examples of it tonight, and it's shown examples of it through the young man who has his work featured in a grocery store. I think that's major to have that vision. And then also you heard about our teachers who are demonstrating their grit and talent through the short video clip, and we'll share that at a later board meeting so that everybody's able to see it. There's so much dedication and commitment of our students and our staff. It's ever present. And then also for our board members to kind of lead with that vigor and to say, you know what, this is important, and you're calling it out in a very real way. And I think that's really important as we continue to do this work in front of our community and also behind the scenes, because we don't change an organization and transform an organization with talk. We transform it with action. And so I just want to say thank you to everyone just for leaning in to what is going to be a very invigorating time for us. And that concludes my comments for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Roby. We'll move into board member comments. And Mr. Ross, may I begin with you tonight?
Yeah, I think I'll say it's exciting about the equity audit. as far as the foundation that is laid for some of the things we're looking to do. I don't think any of us are genuinely surprised by the findings, but I think it gives us a good sort of tangible foundation to build upon. And I'm, just really excited about the things that are to come from that. I think that dovetails well with the strategic planning. And I guess I would challenge ourselves, and to some extent echoing Dr. Flores' comments earlier, really, and challenge ourselves to keep this at the forefront as we embark upon that strategic planning work. Because again, as I said during our previous meeting, I think that's really where the rubber meets the road, is our commitment to that. And so again, it's really just in general, just pretty exciting. I think even in that regard, as I look at the report, for me, just one of the standout things was some data on page 43 of that talks about the eligibility for testing at the 5th grade level. And you really just see really disparate numbers, really even at that level. And so I just, combing through that report, I think this is going to be a lot of things that spur our thought and hopefully hold us accountable to doing things a little differently and a little bit better. And I guess the last thing is maybe not a comment, but maybe a question for Ms. Williams. Was that you and Vic that she was talking about on the dock at East about the love of your life that Sally was talking about? Was that you?
Yeah, no, that wasn't us. We had the pleasure of right there at Riverside.
So. No other comments. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. All right. Ms. Grant.
Yeah. I guess, today gave us a lot to think about. We had a lot of data from a lot of different areas, even down to like the committee reports given to us. And we have had 2.5 years of really rigorous work and deep, hard work. And I know how much you guys have all been engaged. And this looks like 2 more years of really deep and rigorous work. But I'm just really honored to serve with you guys and dig into it and bring other professionals to the table to help us through this. When we talk about what is our work, what have we done, when we spend 4 years, 8 years of our lives, Monday nights together, what is it about? It's really about this work that we've been doing for the past 2 years and we're going to keep doing. So it felt like a lot tonight to me personally, but this is the work, and I'm always just energized by how you guys dig in when I'm like ready to tap out. You guys are digging in. So thank you. Thank you for that. I guess that's all that I have to say. Oh, and congratulations to Elijah. I think that was wonderful. And that also showed how GRPS partners with so many community members. So that was exciting too.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. All right, Reverend Matthias.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it was a lot of information, and some of it was we really shoveled deep. But man, it is invigorating to see what's there and the potential to correct some things that made me feel ingrained or unchangeable or how in the world. But I'm excited for our new superintendent. Her excitement excites me to come ready. I tend to be solution focused, meaning that I want to see stuff for what it is, but I also see them ways that I can go or that we can go. And so it is such a privilege to have all these smart people digging in and looking for ways to make our district better. In fact, I'm ready to go door to door and ask people, either why aren't you coming to GRPS and what would make you come? I'm ready to do that, Superintendent. So here I am. Anyway.
I'll tag team with you, Reverend.
Yeah, me too, John. I'll be there.
Now, you all know this is recorded, so we're all in.
I think everyone knows how I feel about going door to door.
Yeah, don't scare anybody off.
All right. Thank you, Reverend Matthias. Ms. Williams, let's go to you next.
Well, I'd just like to congratulate the young Mr. Brown on what a wonderful, wonderful creative spirit. So I hope that that continues and that you let that creativity just guide your life. It'll take you a long, long way. Also, thank you to GRPS staff, students, and the former students and community for celebrating Ruth Jones. That was so beautiful and allowing me to take part at all. So thank you so much for all your hard work. That concludes my time.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Dr. Flores.
I think everyone has kind of stated everything that I would have said. I will say that we do have a lot of work. This is not a win or lose or draw situation. We're all in this together. We either rise to the top or we sink to the bottom. So we really have to keep our kids and our community in focus and make sure that our actions actually serve the people that we mirror. And those are the people who really count. I mean, we're just passing through, folks. So if we can make some difference in the lives of the children that we serve, they will be the future and they will uplift Grand Rapids. And that's something I hope that we're all, keeping in focus, and that we do the job that we were sent here to do, that we analyze everything that needs to be analyzed and find the solutions that work.
Thank you, Dr. Flores. Ms. Davis.
I don't have any added comments tonight.
All right, thank you. Dr. Baker, how about you?
Yeah, just Ms. Grant said 2 years, and I was thinking more like 13. So, because it seems like one of the first things every new board member says is, well, where are they going? Why are they going there? Can we get the data on that? So, and people have been asking that forever, and I really appreciate this work. It's hard work, and glad I got colleagues willing to do it. And thank you, Dr. Roby, for moving it forward.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. Ms. Lewis.
Yes, I'd just like to second everything everybody has already said, but I would also like to say that I really enjoy these discussions that we have, because so many of you make me think about things differently than what I had thought about it. And so I appreciate all the different perspectives that we all bring to the table. And I'm grateful